Hello, everyone. Welcome to my morning brief. My name is Ugodre, and I do this every once in a while when there's something very important to talk about. Of course, if you're just watching this for the first time, this is Nairametrics TV, your favorite go-to channel if you're looking for anything investment, financial literacy, or anything that you need to grow your money from Nigeria. And on today's morning brief, I want to talk about something that has been raging online, I heard. I've not been online these days, but I got a lot of messages from people telling me to wade into a certain subject about some chap who I understand was complaining because he was asked to pay some tax, apparently from earnings that the person may have received, as an influencer or as a gig worker. And so that really got me thinking, looks like a lot of people don't seem to understand how some of our tax laws really apply, especially when it comes to personal income taxes. So yes, you got it right. So today's morning brief, I'm going to be talking about personal income taxes, especially for you as an influencer. If you're someone who's behind the camera like me, or somebody who maybe influences things on social media, there's a 90% chance that this is how you earn a living. And you probably earn a living because maybe you have a very huge following on TikTok, and so TikTok pays you for the videos you do, or you have a huge following on YouTube and people pay you. YouTube pays you for the videos you do, or it's on X, where X also pays for, I guess, a number of views you have for your post, and then Instagram as well. So there's a lot of people earn a lot of money from social media, and the question then is, how is that money taxed? Like, who exactly do you pay tax to? And pretty interesting. Nigeria did, we got the president to sign a new tax reform act, which goes into effect essentially January 2025. But to the subject I'm about to address, which is taxes for influencers, a lot of the things in the act really didn't change from what we had before, except for maybe how those taxes are calculated. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of those details, but I just want to address this issue clearly. But the first thing that you need to bear in mind when it comes to taxes, especially in Nigeria, is that, and not just in Nigeria, actually anywhere in the world, taxes is always about where you live, like where you are residing. Okay, it's never about where your income is coming from, who's paying you. Well, I mean, a little bit about that, but it's mostly about where you live, right? So as far as the government is concerned, or any government is concerned, you're paying taxes because you live somewhere, not because you work somewhere. So it will always tilt towards where you live and not where you work. And I'm going to explain why, at least in the Nigerian context. So let us compare somebody who has a foreign employment versus somebody who has a Nigerian employment. So the law obviously distinguishes between the two. So if your job, for example, is completely outside Nigeria and your employers are based abroad, then your income would likely not be taxed in Nigeria. Because the impression or the fact is that you live abroad and then your income is earned abroad. So you're not going to be taxed in Nigeria in most cases. Now, if you live in Nigeria and your income is earned in Nigeria, then, I mean, there's obviously no way out. You're going to be taxed in Nigeria as an individual, whether you're an employee or you're self-employed. And influencers are deemed to be self-employed, at least because you also have influencers who have regular jobs, day jobs, and and are influencers as a side hustle. So as an influencer as a side hustle, your income is seen as personal income tax, not as payee, which is pay as you earn, which will be done by your the organization that you work for. But as personal income tax, your tax is paid to, paid here to paid in Nigeria. Now, but if you work for a company abroad and you live here, then the tax is paid to the Nigerian authorities here. Again, if your income is earned from abroad, maybe you work for some company abroad. Let's say, for example, people who do remote working. So you work for Google abroad, or you work for any company abroad, right? Some of these guys who get all these freelance jobs abroad, but you live in maybe Port Harcourt or anywhere. And because these days everybody works online and you can do a lot of stuff online, but the income, your employer is not in Nigeria, the employer is abroad. But the fact that you live here, your taxes get paid here in Nigeria, not over there. Because remember, because you live here, you drive on the roads here. The expectation is that you use the hospitals here, you use the infrastructure here, not over there. And so the taxes that you have to pay is to, Nigeria. And so in terms of personal income tax, it's earned by states. And so you have to pay the tax to in the state Inland Revenue Service where you reside. So that's why if you, for example, work in Lagos, but you live in Ogun State, you pay taxes to Ogun State, not Lagos. Same way if you live in Kaduna and you work in Kano, you pay taxes to Kaduna, or you live in Niger State and you work in Abuja, your taxes are paid to the Inland Revenue Service of Niger State. So people tend to misconstrue some of these facts, and that's just really how this taxes are. And you can get this out in section 13 of the new Tax Reform Act, 13.1 subsection B, 1B. And it's clear, it says the income, gain, or profit from an employment is derived from Nigeria, where the duties of the employment are wholly or partly performed in Nigeria. That's clear. So wholly or partly performed in Nigeria. So long as you're here, like it's all about where you reside. So whether it's TikTok or your YouTube content creator or whatever, you're going to pay taxes here in Nigeria. So the law, however, has a small caveat, right? And it says that non-resident employees working for a startup or engaged in technologically driven services or creative arts may not be taxed in Nigeria if they are already taxed in their home country. Again, where you reside matters. So let's assume that maybe you own a startup here in Nigeria and then you employ an engineer that lives in Poland or Albania or anywhere. And maybe the person is, your staff and manages your IT or whatever. Because you're a startup in Nigeria as well, you're not going to tax that person here. That person gets taxed in their home country. And so you don't pay tax to anybody in Nigeria. The same way, if you live here and your employer is abroad, you don't pay tax there, you pay tax here in Nigeria. That's basically what the law says. And you can test this as well. If you run a website or you run a platform that earns maybe dollars from, say, Google or something, the moment you give them a foreign bank account, maybe a Google, like an account in a bank in the US or whatever, and because you're giving them the bank account, your residence is obviously deemed to be in the US, they will tax you from there on before that money comes in, right? Because Google has to pay that tax, right? But if you give them a Nigerian bank account, they don't really tax you, except the tax is something different. It's not going to be personal income tax. So it's probably going to be maybe online tax or some other kind of tax, but it's not going to be personal income tax, because the personal income tax is going to be taxed here in Nigeria. So ordinarily, what you should do is you take that income and then go to the Inland Revenue Service and then declare those taxes, and then you pay those taxes. And so again, taxes is not about, especially personal income tax, is not about where you earn that money from. It's about where you live, where you reside. So if you work in Nigeria, if you live in Nigeria, beg your pardon, and maybe your employer is in Russia or wherever, you get to pay your personal income tax in Nigeria. Now, where you live in Nigeria also matters, because that taxes goes to the state where you live. So I did some simulation as well. So let's assume that you earn $5,000 a month from maybe TikTok. So let's convert that to say 1,600 naira to dollar. That means you earn 8 million naira monthly. So $5,000 a month from TikTok, 8 million naira monthly, or 36 million naira a year. So what they would typically do is they're going to take out the different like reliefs that we tend to take out when we're paying tax in Nigeria. So first of all, you take out what you call a consolidated relief allowance, which is about 20% or so of that money gets out. And then you now start to go through different graduation of taxes. So the first of all, tax your first 300,000 naira is taxed at 7%, then your next 300,000 at 11%, and on until they now tax the full amount of money that is left. And so if you earn $5,000 a month, for example, from TikTok, which is an equivalent of 8 million, for example, if you use 1.6 as the exchange rate, then they're going to tax you on 76 million a year instead of the entire number, because 8 million times 12 is 96 million. So they're going to tax you on 76 million a year, and you end up paying a tax of about 18 million naira, right? So that's about $11,360 out of the 5 times 12 is what? 120, right? 5 times 12 is $60,000, I beg your pardon. So out of the $60,000, they're going to tax you about $11,000 or thereabout, because the average tax there is about 7% or thereabout, 17%, I beg your pardon. So that's how taxes are done in Nigeria. So as an influencer and you want to like comply with Nigerian tax laws, you don't want them to like stress you or call you out. First thing you got to do is you got to have a TIN number. That's expected if you want to have a bank account these days anyway. So you're going to have a TIN number. You have to have very good records of the income that you earn. A lot of all these social media platforms do have, a way of giving you records of your earnings. And you got to be able to file your annual returns as well for your earnings. And then convert those earnings to Naira, and then you go and pay your tax. You can actually do it yourself. You don't need them to come to tell you how to do it. You can actually do it yourself. And then that's basically, how you get compliant here. So don't get it twisted. Taxes, especially personal income tax in Nigeria, it's basically about where you live. That's the key thing, where you are. In tax parlance, it's called where you're resident. So long as you're a resident Nigerian, you're resident in Nigeria, even if you're a foreigner, so long as you're living in Nigeria, the taxes get paid. And now, there are certain exceptions as well. The exceptions where maybe because of, your immigration status, right, you could be tax exempt. So for example, you could be here and you have some sort of status that waives those taxes away for you, and then you don't pay tax here, you probably pay tax abroad. There are instances like that. Sometimes it could be maybe the sort of employment you have requires that your employer pays those taxes on your behalf. That happens as well. And you even get that in sports too, where you have some footballers, have different fall into different kind of tax brackets. So you have those sort of arrangements done. But without those arrangements, taxes basically based on where you reside. So it's okay to avoid taxes. Tax avoidance is not against the law. You just have to be pretty smart about that. But tax evasion, it's a crime. So evade taxes. All right, that's my money brief for today, and I hope that I've been able to address this issue for those who have been asking me to address it. Of course, if you have comments or you have maybe better angles, or maybe you think there are areas I probably may have left out, please, of course, go to the comment section and let's hear you. Until we do this again, do have a profitable time ahead. Bye.